Let's develop a solution for the parking lot program. We're going to write a program that accepts an input of one character, a C or T for car or truck, and the number of hours a vehicle has been parked in the Bedrock parking lot. We're going to use this table to figure out the amount to charge the customer. For the cars, for the first 2 hours, we're going to charge $4 per hour. For the next 3 hours, we're going to charge $3 per hour. Additional hours over that will be charged $2 per hour. For the truck, it's the same thing. For the first 2 hours, we're going to charge $7 per hour. For the next 3, $5 per hour. And over that, $4 per hour. So I've made up this little table here to assess what we're going to charge. If a car parks for 1 hour, we're going to charge $4. If it parks for 2 hours, we're going to charge $8. If the car parks for 3 hours, we're going to charge that base $8 for the first 2 hours, and then $3 for the 1 hour over. If they park for 4 hours, it's going to be the base 8, and then the 2 hours over, we're going to charge $3 for each hour. We'll continue to do that until they park more than 5 hours. Additional hours after that will be $2 an hour. So if they park 6 hours, we're going to charge that base 17 for the first 5 hours, and then $2 for the hour over. For 7, that will be 17 plus 4, the $2 per hour for the 2 hours over. And it would go on from there. The next one would be 23, and so on and so on. So it looks like the same thing we're going to do for the car, we're also going to do for the truck. The only difference is the values are a little bit higher. So now we have some idea of how we're going to tackle this. Notice we have one path, and then this color portion right here is another path, and then a third path. So we need 3 different paths or conditions to handle these scenarios. So I'm going to open up a blank sheet and start thinking about how my algorithm would develop. So the first thing I'm going to do in this algorithm is, of course, I'm going to input the vehicle code. Now, as I write this program, I'm writing it in exam mode. I'm going to input the hours. So notice I didn't initialize any variables because the price, like the $3 per hour or $4 per hour, I'm going to put those in as literal constants. So the next thing I want to do, once I put in the vehicle and the hours, I want to somehow determine if I have a car. And I'm just going to say here, if I have a car, then I'm going to do the car calculations for the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier. But it's safe to assume that if I don't have a car, then I'm dealing with a truck. So I'm going to say otherwise, if it's a truck, and you know me, I don't like to type a lot, so I'm going to copy this and paste it. I am not a fan of typing, so I'm going to copy it and paste it. So what I'm saying here is if it's a car, I'm going to do something for this first tier. If it's a truck, if it's not a car, it must be a truck, I'm going to do something for that second tier. And then finally, I'm going to display my results. Now, I'm going to develop these tiers a little more because the first tier is hours 2 or less. The next tier is hours between 3 to 5. And the third tier is going to be anything over 5, hours over 5. Now, it stands to reason that everything that I do for the cars, I'm going to do for the trucks. The problem is, if the tier is 1, what am I going to do with it? So I'm probably just going to say calculate the amount hours times 4. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do for the first tier. For the second tier, I'm going to calculate again amount, but this time I'm going to add that base plus, and now I need the hours between 3 and 5. If the person puts in hours as 4, then I want to only calculate it with 2. If the person puts in the hours of 5, I want to calculate it with 3. So we learned a little bit about this with the balloons. I want to say hours minus 2. So if hours is 5, 5 minus 2 is 3. And then I want to multiply that times 3. So I have my second tier done. And now I want to do my third tier. Again, I am not a fan of typing, so I cut and paste the one up here, down here, and now I'm going to change this base to 17. The 17 is the value I have for the base for the third tier. And then I just want to multiply it. If the number is 6, I want to do 17 and 1 times 2, or 2 times 2, or whatever it is over that 5 hours. So if hours is 8, I want to go 3 times 2. So I'm going to go back up here, and I want to say whatever hours turns out to be, I want to subtract 5 from it. So if it's 9, that's 9 minus 5 is 4, so I'm only going to pay for those 4 hours, and the rate to that would be $2 per hour. I'm going to do the same thing for truck, and I know it's going to be the same formulas, so again, I'm not going to really touch this. Since I'm not a fan of a lot of typing, I could take this and paste it in there and then change the values. I believe it's 5 here. And so now I have my algorithm all set up the way I want to do it. So I'm going to take this code and slide it off to the side and open up PyScripter. Now that PyScripter is open, I'm going to create a new Python file. And I'm going to save that file onto my desktop in this parking, and I already have one there, so I'm just going to call this one simple parking, okay? Exam mode parking, whatever you want to call it. Not going to spend too much time on the comment section, but there's my begin right there. I'm doing this in exam mode, so to speak, so I'm not going to put a lot of comments in here. The first thing I want to do is input my vehicle type, so I'm going to call this vehicle code, and it's a string, so I just need the input statement and no conversion. So I'm going to say enter vehicle code, C or T. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is enter the hours. So I'm going to say hours, and that does need conversion, so I'm going to input the hours as an integer and enter hours. Now that I have those set up, I look over here now and I want to say if this vehicle is a car, vehicle code is equal to, and I'm having the user put it in as a C. So the data type for that would be a C in quotations. If I don't put quotes around it, it will assume that C is a variable name and not a string data item. I want to say, just to give my user a little leniency, that they're able to put in a lowercase c. So some of you might think that it's okay for me to do that. But in class I talked about this will not work because I need a whole condition on this side of the OR. So again, because I'm not a fan of typing, I will simply put it like this. And then I'll put my colon there. So now I'm saying if vehicle code is a C or lowercase c, I now have a car. So I am now ready to calculate my amount, right? But the first thing I have to do is figure out which tier I'm in. So I'm going to type in if hours is less than or equal to 2, then I'm in the first tier. And for that tier, I'm going to say amount is equal to hours times 4. If I'm not in the first tier, I want to check to see if I'm in the second tier. So if, well, if I was in the first tier, it was either 0, 1, or 2. So those possibilities are gone. The only thing that's left is 3 through infinity, really, but anything else, if. So now I really just want to check to see if hours is less than or equal to 5. If hours is less than or equal to 5, then I'm in the second tier. Less than or equal to 5 only goes down to 3. And if it is, I want to say amount is equal to 8 plus the quantity of hours minus 2 times 3. And there you have it. Now, if it's not less than 2 and it's not less than 5, less than or equal to 5, then it must be greater than 5. So I'm just simply going to say else here. I don't have to say else if it's over 5, because if it's neither one of the first two tiers, it must be in the second tier, third tier. So here, I'm simply going to say amount is equal to 17, that base, hours minus 5 times 2. And that is it for the 3 tiers for the cars. Now I want to do trucks also, so I know the user is only going to put in a C or a T for the sake of this exam or this exercise. I say exam because on the exam I don't want you to worry about invalid characters. So I'm simply going to say else. And then because I'm not a fan of typing, I'm going to highlight all of this and put it there. And now what am I saying? I'm saying now, if this is a truck, I'm going to multiply this first tier times 7. And this is where I always get in trouble, right? Times 7. So now this works for trucks. So if the letter is not C or lowercase c, it must be a T, and I do those calculations. Finally, I want to print amount equals $, comma, format, amount, 0.2f, and we have it there. And lastly, I want to do my little input, $n. And that's the end of the code. So what we want to do now is test this to see if it's working. I'm going to run a quick syntax check on it. It says the syntax is okay. And then I'm going to look at my values that I put here, drag this off to the side, make it a little, well, that's good enough. And then I'm going to run the program and see if I get the figures that I'm looking for. So I'm going to put in C, and then I'll put in 5. Down here for 5, my answer is $17. That is correct. This dummy input right there, I'll just put anything in there. It doesn't really matter because it's just there to stop my program. Okay? So now that I have this program done, I want to show you that I can, from the desktop, run this program by simply double-clicking on it like this. And it runs here. So again, if I put in T and then 7, it gives me how much I should have for 7 hours parking a car. Let's see if that's right. And I look here, and yes, it should be 37. Notice my prompt there doesn't clearly distinguish where my input is and where my prompt stops. So I'm going to go back into the code, and I'm going to add a little colon here and a space so that my prompt is distinguishable from my input itself. And I'll save that. I'll go back out to the desktop, run my program again, and this time I see it's now distinguishable. So I'll put in C, I'll put in 9, and my answer is 25. And I can check that with the calculator to see if it's correct. Notice I am able to look at this output because the output stayed on the screen. This is because we put that input statement at the bottom of the code. If we didn't have that statement at the bottom of the code, let me comment it out, save it. We run this program now, and I put in C and put in 5, the window goes away right away. So it is the input statement that's causing the program to stop so a user can actually view the output. Okay, so this is the program written in exam mode, so to speak, with all of these literal values here. Let's look at what that program would look like if we were to write it as a project. So I'm going to open this up in PyScripter. And now we have the program here with initialized values. So now that I look at this, I have the prices of the cars and the prices of the trucks. That's nothing new, so I'm putting those prices there. But now I have these variables called thresholds. And the threshold is where we start the new pricing scheme. So here we're starting a new pricing scheme with 2, and then once we get over 5 hours. So in my calculations now, I have if the hours is less than the first threshold or less than the second threshold. What this allows me to do is, what if I wanted to change it to the first 4 hours or the next 7 hours? I could simply change these values here and everything would automatically calculate differently down here. Also, of course, if I wanted to change the prices, I could easily do so here, and then all the prices would be changed there. That's a lot easier than going in here and having to change all the values there for every constant or literal that I have there. So this program works the same. The only difference is it's now more editable or modifiable by putting these in there, and it's a little more readable. We can actually see what's going on. Lastly, if you see here, I have a third option here that says if the user doesn't put in a C or T, then that code was invalid and their amount is 0. So it should be that code is invalid and their amount is $1 million. So what I do want to point out here is now that I'm looking for 3 things, my second tier now becomes an actual condition with an elif. When it was just a simple 1 or 2 tiers, I didn't need a condition here because if it wasn't 1, it defaulted to the other. But now that I have the invalid path here, I need to actually explicitly say whether it's path 1 or 2. And if it's not 1 or 2, then it's path 3 where the code is invalid. Hope you enjoyed this. There's also exercise number 9 dealing with the cars sold. You might want to try that out before the exam. But I wanted to walk you through this entire process to make sure you understand how to complete exercise 10.